I don't know what that means. Maybe they've got somebody with some expertise in computers or computer security. They bring together a group and they say, we're going to do a data privacy program. And so hopefully they bring in experts like our firm or other consultants to help, or they have somebody on staff that's got appropriate expertise in information security. Oftentimes we come in after the fact and we see situations where someone has attempted a privacy program and it just hasn't worked. And so I wanted to review with you some of the common pitfalls that we see as we work with our clients that have attempted data privacy programs or have started down a path of a data privacy program. The first pitfall that we see is the hands-off approach. And with the hands-off approach, they've gone online, they've gotten some sort of a risk assessment template or survey. Perhaps they've bought a tool. In some cases, there are some automated tools that have web surveys for data privacy. And they've sent this out. Maybe they sent it to all employees or all managers, and they've sent out, tell us how you use this information. And they've developed some sort of a scoring system that, based on their responses, it will automatically tell them what to do and how to fix all of the problems of the world. And the problem is it removes the involvement of an information security professional to really discern perception versus reality, to really discern what truly is a data privacy problem and what isn't. And so what we find is companies that try these survey approaches and use that and only that as a method of understanding their data privacy risks commonly end up with spreadsheets and data that they can't use and that's not effective because it's not accurate in a lot of cases. And I think that the intent is not to burden people with a lot of meetings or interviews with the information security team. The intent is good, but the result is that departments get more frustrated because when automated results get back, automated suggestions on how to improve data privacy, you end up with departments that are more frustrated because that may not be realistic, or it may not truly help protect their needs given their business drivers. The second pitfall we see is people that go with what I call the inventory of grains of sand at the beach. Every few months we have a company that calls us and says, okay, we've got a data privacy problem, and here's what I know. I have 100 databases. Each database has 1,000 attributes, so just figure out which ones of those are private, we'll encrypt those, and we'll call it a day. And the problem with that approach is, first of all, you're way down at the minutia detail right away. And so you're sifting through data. You don't necessarily know what the purpose is of that data, whether or not it's necessary data or data that can be truncated. You don't know the use of that data and the access management controls around that data. And so you kind of get lost in the details and you end up with some analysis on data that may or may not help you, in the end, implement practical solutions to protect that data. So certainly there are great tools out there that will scan for private data that we recommend that you use at the end of your project to validate the information that you've gotten. But starting down in the minutia details can often be a frustrating exercise. And the fact of the matter is most of the breaches that you hear about, most of the breaches that have been publicly reported, are not because a database didn't have certain fields encrypted. They're usually a bigger problem and possibly a bigger solution. The next common issues that we see with privacy programs is that they fail to translate questions to an objective level. It would be the equivalent of coming in and saying, so going to a company, a department, and saying, do you have sensitive data and do you well protect it, is the equivalent of asking somebody if they're tall, short, somewhat short. It's not quantifiable. And so what you want to do is, whenever possible, when doing initial phases of data privacy investigation, you want to try to determine objective results on where data is, how it's classified, what its volumes is, and what it's used for. And so we always try to keep questions to departments or to people that are not information security professionals objective, so that you can get objective answers that are comparable from one department or one group to another. The other thing we find is bias. So what we find is if I go and I ask you, is the information in your backpack public or sensitive or highly sensitive? Everyone feels that the information about them or the information about their department is very sensitive. People are protective about their own data. And so instead, you need to bias yourselves towards a data classification scheme which sets parameters on what is sensitive, what is confidential, etc., as you've laid out. And so inevitably, if you ask somebody, their data is always very sensitive and it's always very well protected. So if I ask you, how well do you control your own personal information? I think everyone would say, I do a good job. I shred things. But if you don't ask objective questions like, tell me about how you use email and whether or not you email your own private information, which is, as you all know, is not a secure way to transmit information. Without asking those objective questions, you're not really going to get to the core of the risks that you may have from data privacy perspective. Okay, so these are some of the key attributes of a successful data privacy program. First of all, it's aligned with the organization's strategic objectives. So we always try to tie it back to what the business is trying to do. So if you are a credit card company, your reputation is key. People have a lot of choices when they pick a credit card, but they want to pick you because you're the most trusted and because they feel like they'll have the least incident of fraud, etc. with your card. And so we always want to tie privacy programs or information security projects of any type back to the company's strategic objectives. Data privacy programs is an organization-wide problem. It's not an IT problem. It's not a compliance department problem. It's an organization-wide problem. And so for that reason, it's got to have the full and visible support of the upper management of a company. It starts at the top and it goes all the way down. You have to have buy-in for a data privacy program across the organization. It's not sufficient that just the managers know what's going on, they know the plan. You need everybody in the corporation or the government agency or the university to understand what the objectives are of the data privacy program and what their role. So you're going to have specific targeted education, specific targeted documentation for every level of your organization, but it's an organization-wide effort. Anyone who's involved in the handling, transmittal, etc. of customer data needs to be involved in the program. It's got to be championed with people with sufficient expertise. And so, my job is to come in and help companies provide that expertise if they don't already have it in-house. But companies have to either have in-house or outside consultant help from people that are experts in information security so that they don't miss data privacy pitfalls and threats that might not be as obvious to them initially. We talked about communication to all employees, and it has to be tested for effectiveness. So you can write a great program, you can, create a great policy, but if you're not testing to see if it's effective, you haven't really mitigated your risk fully. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the top-down approach. So I was saying that it starts at the top of an organization and it filters down to every employee in the organization. So this is an example of an organizational chart and how we walk through the process of a data privacy project. So it starts at the very top, Acme University. And let's say Acme University has 3 different departments. The initial steps in a data privacy project are as easy as saying, all right, what do these departments do? Do they have any interaction with private data, whether that be consumer data or sensitive research that's not public, etc.? So we would go through and say, where is there pertinency to the protection of data privacy? And right off the bat, we're going to focus on certain departments and certain processes that are more sensitive, and some that maybe we don't need to waste our time on because they clearly have no impact on consumer data. Once we identify a process, something that a company is doing, for the purposes of this example, we'll take consumer marketing. So the process by which a company analyzes its current customers and its prospects and sends out marketing materials, does campaigns, places advertisements, etc. So in this case, that's our process A2. There's going to be a number of different what we call information assets associated with that process. In order to market to consumers, you're going to have applications that create mailers. You're going to have databases that contain your information that you can parse for this kind of data. You presumably may print some of those at any given time. You might have paper. You may have third parties that you work with, so companies that actually do the printing or companies that help you develop campaigns. You may have reports that you run out of these systems, like your top 100 customers, etc. And so what we look at is we look to build a matrix of information assets. So we say, where's the data and what type of data do you have? A lot of times one of the pitfalls of programs that we see otherwise is they focus just on the computer systems. And that might be the focus for your initial phase of the project. But really protecting data privacy involves looking at